I was up to my elbows in soapy water when the calls started rolling in. My phone buzzed so much it nearly vibrated off the kitchen counter. I ignored it, focused on scrubbing the last of the breakfast dishes. This weekend was supposed to be my sanctuary, the first real break I'd had in months from my landscape design business. I'd planned 3 glorious days alone at my lake house, just me, my fishing gear, and the whisper of wind through the pines. On the 12th call, I finally dried my hands and checked the screen. 10 missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize, plus 2 from my neighbor, George. As I was about to call him back, a text message popped up. "Frank, there are dozens of people at your lake house setting up for some event. Did you rent it out?" I felt my stomach drop. No, I definitely had not rented out my lake house. The property had been in my family for 3 generations. My grandfather built it with his own hands after returning from Korea, and my father expanded it after his tour in Vietnam. As a former Marine myself, that house represented more than just a vacation spot. It was our family's legacy, our private retreat. I immediately called George back. "Frank," he answered on the first ring. "Thank God. There's about 20 cars parked along the road by your place, and people are carrying in tables and chairs. Some catering van just pulled up too." "What the hell? I'll be there in 30 minutes. Can you keep an eye on things until then?" "You bet." "Want me to tell them to leave?" I considered it but decided against it. "No, just watch. I want to see who's behind this." I threw on a clean shirt, jumped into my truck, and floored it all the way to the lake. My property sits on the eastern shore of Lake Evergreen, about 45 minutes outside of town. It's part of the Pinecrest community, where I'd reluctantly agreed to join the HOA when I inherited the property from my father 5 years ago. The $200 annual fee seemed reasonable for road maintenance and the community dock upkeep. As I rounded the final curve in the road, my jaw dropped. George wasn't exaggerating. The narrow lane leading to my cabin was lined with vehicles. I could see white tents erected in my backyard, and the sound of music drifted through the trees. The blood pounded in my ears as I parked my truck across the driveway, effectively blocking anyone else from entering. George jogged over from his property next door. "They've been arriving for about 2 hours now. I tried asking what was going on, but everyone just said they were here for the Montgomery Foundation fundraiser." "The what?" I sputtered, staring at the crowd milling around MY property, drinking champagne on MY deck, setting up a goddamn buffet on MY lawn. That's when I spotted her, Kathleen Jennings, head of our HOA and the most entitled person I'd ever met. She was a woman in her mid-50s with an expensive blonde bob and perpetually pursed lips, dressed in a pastel pantsuit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. She was directing a catering staff where to place warming trays on tables they'd set up on my back deck. "Excuse me," I called out, pushing past a group of well-dressed guests. "What the hell is going on here?" Kathleen turned, her expression momentarily startled before settling into something between annoyance and condescension. "Frank Morris," she said with a tight smile. "I didn't expect to see you here." "You didn't expect to see me? At my own house?" I gestured wildly at the transformation of my property. "What is all this?" She waved her hand dismissively. "It's the annual Montgomery Foundation fundraiser. We raise money for local children's charities." "That's commendable," I said through gritted teeth. "But why is it happening at MY house without MY permission?" A small crowd had gathered, watching our exchange with interest. Kathleen laughed lightly, as if I'd said something amusing rather than asked a perfectly reasonable question. "Oh, Frank, don't be difficult. The community bylaws clearly state that HOA properties can be utilized for community functions. We sent a notice months ago. I never received any notice, and this isn't an HOA property. This is my private residence." She reached into a leather portfolio and pulled out a document. Section 7, Paragraph 4. Community members agree to reasonable use of properties for approved community functions with appropriate notice. I snatched the document from her hand and scanned it. There was indeed such a clause, but it was clearly meant for common areas like the park and community dock, not private homes. This doesn't apply to private residences, Kathleen, and you know it. These people need to leave. Now. Her smile vanished. We have over 100 guests arriving, many of whom have donated thousands of dollars. The county commissioner is on his way. You will not embarrass this community with your selfishness. My selfishness? You broke into my house. We used the emergency key from the HOA lockbox. It's perfectly within my authority. I ran my hand through my hair, trying to process the sheer audacity. No, it absolutely is not. That key is for emergencies only. This is breaking and entering, not to mention trespassing. A tall man in an expensive suit approached us. Is there a problem, Kathleen? She turned to him with a completely transformed expression, all smiles and graciousness. No problem at all, Stephen. This is Frank Morris, the owner of this beautiful property. He's just a bit surprised by our event. Frank, this is Stephen Montgomery of the Montgomery Foundation. Stephen extended his hand, which I reluctantly shook. Beautiful place you have here, Frank. We're so grateful you agreed to host. The lake view is perfect for our fundraiser. That's just it, I said firmly. I didn't agree to anything. I never gave permission for this event, and I need everyone to leave. Stephen's eyebrows shot up, and he looked at Kathleen. Her cheeks flushed red. There seems to be a misunderstanding, she said quickly. Frank's been traveling, and the communication must have gotten lost. But I'm sure we can work something out. She grabbed my arm and pulled me aside, her nails digging into my skin. Listen to me, she hissed, dropping all pretense of pleasantness. We have important people coming today. People who can make life very difficult for you if you embarrass me. The event will proceed as planned. I pulled my arm away. This is illegal, Kathleen. You can't just commandeer someone's private property. Watch me, she said, her voice cold. By the way, did you file permits for that dock extension you built last summer? Or the tree removal you did in April? I don't recall approving those. My blood boiled. The dock extension was well within regulations, and I'd removed one diseased tree that was threatening to fall on the house. No permit required. But Kathleen was making it clear, play ball or face her retribution. I needed a moment to think. I walked down to the edge of my property where George was waiting. This is insane, he said. Want me to call the police? I considered it but hesitated. If I shut down this charity event with cops, I'd be the bad guy to everyone in the community, regardless of who was actually at fault. Plus, the HOA could indeed make my life difficult with frivolous violations and fines. Give me a minute, I told George. I pulled out my phone and called my friend Eliza Jackson, a real estate attorney who'd helped me with the property transfer after my father passed. Eliza? It's Frank. I have a situation and need urgent legal advice. I quickly explained what was happening. She was silent for a moment, then burst out. They did what? That's not just a violation of HOA overreach. That's criminal trespassing and breaking and entering. The emergency key access is strictly limited to actual emergencies by state law. What should I do? There are already dozens of people here, with more arriving. Some big charity event. Document everything, she said firmly. Take photos, get names. Then you have two choices: call the police immediately and press charges, or you let the event proceed, document everything, and we hit them with a massive lawsuit afterward. Plus criminal charges for the unauthorized entry. I thought about it. If I let it continue, doesn't that imply I gave consent? Not if you clearly state your objection and document it. Send Kathleen a text right now stating you never authorized this event, that she's trespassing, and that you're allowing it to continue only to avoid disappointing the charity attendees who are innocent in this. Then we'll deal with her later. That seemed like the best approach. I didn't want to punish the charity, or the guests who had no idea they were attending an event on stolen property. I sent the text to Kathleen exactly as Eliza suggested, then walked back to the house. Kathleen was checking her phone and looked up at me with narrowed eyes. She knew I wasn't backing down, but she also knew I wasn't going to make a scene. Not yet, anyway. For the next several hours, I moved through my own home like a guest, documenting everything with my phone camera. The caterers had rearranged my furniture and were using my kitchen. Someone had set up a projector in my living room showing a slideshow about the charity. My deck had been transformed with string lights and floral arrangements. At least 100 people wandered through my property, admiring the view and sipping champagne, completely oblivious that the whole event was unauthorized. I overheard Kathleen several times, taking credit for arranging this spectacular venue, and telling people how she'd convince Frank to share his family retreat for such an important cause. It took every ounce of my self-control not to confront her in front of everyone. As evening approached, Stephen Montgomery took to a small podium they'd set up on my lawn. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for your generous support tonight. Thanks to you, we've raised over $75,000 for children's programs in our county." Applause erupted. I had to admit, it was an impressive amount for a good cause. If only they had actually asked for my permission. And a special thanks to our gracious host, Frank Morris, for opening his beautiful lakeside home to us, and to Kathleen Jennings for coordinating this magnificent event. More applause. Kathleen beamed and waved, then gestured for me to come forward. Reluctantly, I stepped up. "Thank you all for coming," I said simply, offering a tight smile before stepping away. Kathleen looked disappointed that I hadn't played along with her charade, but the guests seemed none the wiser. As the event wound down and guests began to leave, I approached Stephen Montgomery privately. "Stephen, I need to tell you something. I never authorized this event. Kathleen used the HOA emergency key to access my property without permission and set this up without my knowledge." His face registered shock. "What? But Kathleen assured us you had agreed months ago." "She lied. I only found out when my neighbor called me today to ask why dozens of people were at my house." Stephen looked mortified. I don't know what to say. We would never knowingly trespass on someone's private property. The foundation will make this right, I promise you." I nodded. "I appreciate that. And to be clear, I'm not upset with the charity or the guests. This is solely about Kathleen's actions." By 10 p.m., most guests had departed. The catering crew was cleaning up, and Kathleen was saying goodbye to the last few attendees. I approached her as she stood alone on my deck. "Quite an event," I said evenly. She smiled smugly. "Yes, very successful. You should be honored your property could serve such a worthy cause." "Cut the crap, Kathleen. You know what you did was illegal. Breaking and entering. Trespassing. Unauthorized use of the emergency key. I've documented everything." Her smile faltered slightly. "Don't be dramatic, Frank. The HOA bylaws don't apply to private residences for non-emergency use, and you know it. I've already spoken with my attorney. You have two options: resign from the HOA board immediately and pay for any damages to my property, or face a lawsuit and criminal charges." She laughed, but it sounded hollow. "You wouldn't dare. Do you know how many connections I have in this community? I can make your life miserable." "Try me," I said. "I've already spoken with Stephen Montgomery. He was horrified to learn you lied about having my permission. How do you think the rest of the HOA board will feel when they discover you've exposed them to significant legal liability?" For the first time, uncertainty flickered in her eyes. "This is ridiculous. I was doing a good thing. For who? The charity? Or yourself? I notice you collected quite a lot of praise and recognition tonight for your generosity with someone else's property." She gathered her things hastily. "This conversation is over. The cleaning crew will be finished within the hour. I'll be calling an emergency HOA meeting tomorrow to discuss your unauthorized use of my property and the emergency key." I called after her. "You might want to have a lawyer present." She stormed off without another word. True to my word, I emailed every HOA board member that night, detailing what had happened and requesting an emergency meeting. By morning, my inbox was flooded with horrified responses from board members who had assumed Kathleen had obtained proper authorization. The meeting was set for 3 p.m. the following day at the community center. I arrived with Eliza, my attorney, and a full documentation package of the unauthorized event, including timestamps showing when I discovered what was happening and my clear objection text to Kathleen. The board members arrived looking grim. Kathleen showed up last, accompanied by a man I assumed was her lawyer. She avoided eye contact with everyone. The board president, Tom Williams, called the meeting to order. "We're here to discuss a serious allegation regarding the unauthorized use of Frank Morris's private residence for the Montgomery Foundation fundraiser. Frank, would you like to present your side?" For the next 20 minutes, I calmly laid out the facts. I had never received any notice about the event, had never given permission, and had only discovered it was happening when my neighbor called me. I explained how Kathleen had used the emergency key without authorization and had threatened to make trouble for me if I didn't go along with it. When I finished, all eyes turned to Kathleen. "These accusations are absurd," she began, her voice quavering slightly. "As HOA manager, I have broad discretion to utilize community resources for approved events. I sent notice to all residents months ago. Do you have proof Mr. Morris received this notice?" Eliza asked. "Well, it was sent to all residents. That's not what I asked. Do you have proof he specifically received and acknowledged this notice?" Kathleen shifted uncomfortably. "No, but..." "And can you point to the specific bylaw that allows the HOA to utilize a private residence, not a common area, but someone's home, without explicit permission from the owner?" Section 7, paragraph 4 clearly states. Eliza cut her off. "I have the bylaws right here. That section specifically refers to common areas, not private residences. Furthermore, the emergency key access provision in Section 12 explicitly states that emergency keys are to be used only in actual emergencies, such as fire, flood, or other urgent situations. A charity fundraiser is not an emergency." Tom Williams looked grave. "Kathleen, did you tell the Montgomery Foundation that you had Mr. Morris's permission?" She hesitated, which was answer enough. "I assumed he would be amenable to supporting such a worthy cause." "So you lied to them?" another board member said flatly. "I facilitated an important community event. We raised $75,000 for children's programs. By committing breaking and entering," I pointed out. "By the way, Stephen Montgomery called me this morning. The foundation is mortified and has offered to cover any damages to my property, plus a substantial donation to the veterans support group I volunteer with as an apology." The room fell silent. Finally, Tom spoke. "Kathleen, your actions have exposed this entire HOA to significant legal liability. You used your position to commit what appears to be several criminal offenses." "Criminal? That's absurd," she sputtered. "Actually," Eliza interjected, "unauthorized use of an emergency key to access a private residence without permission or an actual emergency is breaking and entering under state law. Hosting an event on private property without the owner's consent is criminal trespassing. And representing to others that you had authorization you didn't have potentially constitutes fraud." Kathleen's lawyer whispered something in her ear, and she visibly deflated. "What are you seeking here, Mr. Morris?" Tom asked me. First, Kathleen's immediate resignation from the HOA board. Second, a formal apology. Third, reimbursement for the professional cleaning service I'll need to restore my property. And fourth, a review of HOA emergency key policies to ensure this never happens to anyone else. Tom nodded. "Those seem like reasonable requests, given the circumstances." "Kathleen?" She stared at the table for a long moment before her lawyer nudged her. "Fine. I'll resign. And I'll pay for the cleaning." "And the apology?" Tom prompted. She looked up at me, her expression a mixture of anger and humiliation. "I'm sorry if there was a misunderstanding about the use of your property." "That's not an apology," Eliza noted. "That's deflecting responsibility." Kathleen's jaw tightened. I apologize for using your property without explicit permission, she said stiffly. It wasn't heartfelt, but it would have to do. As the meeting adjourned, Tom pulled me aside. There's something else you should know, Frank. We've discovered this isn't the first time Kathleen has done something like this. Not the unauthorized property use, but there have been financial irregularities in the HOA accounts. We were already quietly investigating. I raised an eyebrow. What kind of irregularities? Questionable reimbursements, vendor contracts going to friends at above market rates, that sort of thing. We're still piecing it all together, but your situation brought everything to a head. The board has decided to involve the authorities. 2 weeks later, I was enjoying a peaceful morning fishing off my dock when George walked down from his cabin. Have you heard the news? He asked, settling into the chair beside me. What news? Kathleen was arrested this morning. Turns out she's been embezzling from the HOA for years. The charity event at your place was just the tip of the iceberg. She was skimming from vendor contracts, creating fake maintenance bills, all sorts of stuff. They're saying it could be over $100,000. I shook my head, not entirely surprised. Entitlement is a hell of a drug. The new HOA board wants to know if you'd consider joining, George added. Said they could use someone who stands up for what's right. I chuckled. I'll think about it. Right now, I'm just enjoying having my lake house back to myself. A month later, I did join the HOA board, helping to implement new transparency measures and strict guidelines for emergency key usage. Kathleen eventually pleaded guilty to embezzlement and fraudulent misuse of property, receiving probation and an order to pay full restitution. The Montgomery Foundation made good on their promise, donating generously to my veterans group and formally apologizing for their unwitting role in the fiasco. Stephen and I actually became friends, and the following year, I voluntarily hosted a proper, authorized fundraiser at my lake house that raised over $100,000 for children's programs. As for my lake house, it remained what my grandfather and father had always intended, a peaceful family retreat. But now it also had quite a story to tell, about the time an entitled HOA manager thought she could take whatever she wanted and learn the hard way that some property rights can't be signed away with HOA bylaws. Sometimes I still think about those 100 disappointed guests who had no idea they were attending an illegal event. But then I remember that justice prevailed, the charity still benefited, and my family legacy remained intact. In the end, that's all that really mattered.